Hi, thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you caught the last episode. I'm Solomon Wangwe. In this episode, we're going to be discussing the issue of women and land ownership in Kenya. I particularly love this topic for many different reasons. Statistically, majority of our customers as a company are women. There are very many good reasons for that, and I'm going to be discussing what the legal implications are. And so the normal question we receive is, are there any restrictions on gender as far as ownership is concerned in Kenya? And the answer, thankfully, is no. And that has always been the case. We are a patriarchal culture in Kenya, generally. And even so, there have never been any restrictions on women owning land. I happen to know, because we've dealt with the Maasai culture quite a lot over the last 5.5 years. In the Maasai culture, women were never counted in the issue of land ownership, especially to do with inheritance. And that's a cultural thing, and that's true for probably many other tribes in Kenya. But legally speaking, if a Maasai woman wanted to go out and buy land, there's nothing restricting her from doing so. And in my view, that's a positive thing. So for all the ladies out there, if you're sitting on the fence about investing and owning property or land specifically, fear no more. There are no restrictions, especially for those of you who are younger. Maybe you're still living at home, you've just gotten your ID, and you're considered to be an adult by the government of Kenya, and you're thinking about getting into investments. Please don't hold back. There are no restrictions whatsoever, and anyone who tries to restrict you probably should not be someone that you're listening to, right? And then the other question has to do with transfer of property, and that has to do with trading or buying and selling. A lot of people may not know this, but in 2010, the new constitution wanted to correct a lot of cultural biases that have kept women from progressing economically and making these kinds of investments because of cultural norms and so on. And so what happened is a law was passed that stipulated that if you're married, if you're a woman and you're married, whether you are a sole wife to someone else, or you are one of several wives to someone, as is typical in the Maasai culture, many in Western Kenya practice polygamy, as well as at the coast. For me, for example, if I was, say, a polygamous person, which I'm not, but say I had 2 wives, and I wanted to sell a property that I owned, even if it's completely in my name, my wife's names are not on the property, or even my only and current wife's name is not on the property. If I want to sell that property, legally speaking, I must have her written consent to sell that property. Even as far as subdivision is concerned, I must have a written consent from her as my spouse. It's actually called a spousal consent, which you will need when you go to the Land Control Board to ask for their permission to transact on this property, whether it's subdivision or a transfer because you're selling. If you're buying, nothing says that I need my wife's permission to buy a property. But if I'm going to sell off that property, I must have her permission. If I have more than one wife, I need all of them to give me permission. The simple reason around this is to avoid a situation where I, as a breadwinner or a provider for a family, is selling off my children's future without the knowledge and cooperation of my spouses. I think that makes perfect sense. I think that's a good thing as far as protecting women's rights in Kenya. And so if you're out there and you didn't know, now you know. You can always consult a licensed advocate of the High Court of Kenya to advise you on these things. Please do not take any shortcuts. If you're out there and you think you're selling a property without your spouse's knowledge or permission, don't do it. That makes your transaction illegal in the strictest sense possible. Talk to them, explain your case, have their cooperation. You need a written affidavit from them giving you consent, which you have to provide to the Land Control Board, especially if you're dealing with freehold property. Same is true for leasehold property. You have to have those in place to make sure that you're not going against the law and ultimately not dishonoring your spouse. I hope that helps. If you have any comments or questions to make, please feel free to reach out to us. You can check out our website, www.goshenacquisitions.com, or subscribe to our YouTube channel and share. Thank you again for watching. You've been watching Solomon Wangwe on Own Land in Kenya. Stay tuned for more information on strategic land investment.